On a recent live stream, you talked about how there is no doer. But then you also said, yes, hello. Sorry, I'm just getting told. Great, sounds great, very good. Okay, but you also said it was a cop-out for a person that was disrupting your show to use that as an excuse. That really confused me. How can there be certain situations where there is no doer and other situations where there would be? Rich Archer from Buddha at the Gas Pump has made similar statements. Please help clarify. Well, ultimately, on the absolute level, there is no doer. Everything is coming from this spontaneous beingness. But in the human world, we have this machine that digests information. So if you say to that machine, can you pass me the salt? And the machine says, I don't know where the salt is. And you say, oh, it's in the cupboard above the kettle. The body can get up and it can go over and pick up that salt and give it to that person that's asking. Now we assume that that's free will, that we did that with free will. But actually there is no free will in that. There is an instrument that's a robot that's interactive and can interact with its environment and change its ways of being through interacting with the environment. And it's not the robot's choice. So the robot asks a question, where is the salt? It's not the robot that's choosing to ask where the cupboard is or where the salt is. But through that question, through the programming in of the ability to question, it then gets updated, the information that's in the brain, and it goes and looks for the salt. What you find with a lot of people that are into non-duality, and this took me a long time of speaking to work this out, is that they use it as a way to stay in particular habits that they don't want to question. And ultimately it's not their free will or choice, but someone like me can say this and it might help them go inwards. So the person I was speaking about on Ustream live stream last time, I've known for many years, and he's never like super rude or super abusive, but he can be quite rude. And by me saying that to him, it most probably put him off being disruptive and being rude in that session. It's not that he had free will or choice, but the instrument gets updated. It gets information saying that Lisa is not going to tolerate that behavior anymore. And then the information gets received and there is a walking away. So we appear as if we have free will and choice, but there's nobody actually in here that does have free will or choice. But we always have to function in the world as if there's free will or choice. So if I'm, say, with a friend and they keep, I don't know, they keep doing something which is irritating me or bugging me, say they keep leaving all the heaters on and all the lights on or something, and after a couple of days of them staying in my home, I finally say, I would like you to not leave the radiators and heaters and lights on all the time. Now somebody that's really trying to be in spiritual bypassing and is really like trying to use this teaching as excuse, they might reply, there is no doer, I couldn't have done it any differently. Now that's the ultimate truth, absolutely, that is true in the absolute, but in the relative, that's an absolute bypass and trying to get out. So in the relative, the appropriate response would be, oh sorry, I will try harder to turn the lights off. I'm sorry if it's causing the offence, I was unconscious of it. And we've most probably all had those friends, and maybe we've done it, I'm sure I've done it, where we've tried to use the absolute as an excuse to get out of daily living. So maybe you're having an argument with your partner, and then in the middle of it you say, but there is no doer, how can you be making such a fuss, it's not my fault that I've slept with 10 people or something, or whatever it is, whatever they say to you, or that it's not my fault that I never do the washing up. This has got nothing to do with the argument. This is somebody, It's nothing to do with non-duality. This is somebody trying to defend themselves. In the relative world, we have made up this word called responsibility, and we live in a society that believes in that. So if I was to go and smash all the windows in the high street because I felt bored, that would be my responsibility and I would be punished in that society. On the absolute level, it's not my fault. That was what was just happening. But on the relative level, if somebody had said to me beforehand, but if you do that, Lisa, you will actually be charged and you will be prosecuted and it will be held as your fault, then the information could go in and maybe there wouldn't be the doing that, the smashing the windows. So on the human level, you have to act like a human. And we've made up these words and we live in this society that has the idea of free will and choice. It's not actually true, and maybe in 100 to 300 years' time, we'll have reinvented those words and we'll be speaking differently, so it kind of implies that there's no choice, but still personal responsibility has to be taken. So he says, how do you determine absolute versus relative in the moment? Well, basically on the human level, so on the day-to-day living, if somebody says anything, it's all on the relative. Somebody bumps into your car, you can't be bothered to go to work, that's all on the relative. The human world is all on the relative. A human has no need to discuss the absolute unless it's a teacher. Could be teaching your friends, that's okay, but the rest of the time there's no need to discuss it. The relative is the relative. And on the relative level, I would recommend that all of you, read psychology and try to understand, and sociology and history, to try and understand and become more balanced, happy people, and to communicate better with people. And all of us can do that, including me. I'm always trying to read stuff to learn how to socialize and to interact with people in a more balanced way. So all of us can learn that. But the absolute is that which is experiencing now and really cannot be talked about or put into words, so you never need to discuss that. Neither would have free will, though. This is where I get confused. I don't think there's anything to be confused about, Brad. Like, it's mostly that your mind is doing something else. It's very simple. On the relative act level, you act as if you have the free will. You look at the orange juice, you look at the apple juice, and you say, I choose the apple juice. Your problem most probably is, Brad, that you need to go deeper into that. So it's most probably that you don't need to ask more questions about the absolute and the relative. It's more than likely that you need to go deeper into how that makes you feel on the relative level. Like, why is your mind, like what's your mind trying to do here? On the human level, so anything to do with the human, it's as if you have free will. On the absolute level, it comes from nowhere, and that this is all being experienced in silence and is silence. But if your habit is to always try and understand things, then see what your mind's doing. See where your mind is getting confused. See what's underneath that questioning. What does that make you feel? What does that confusion make you feel? Not being able to put it into tidy boxes. Okay, think I may get it. Neither have free will even though relative feels like it. Totally. The relative, you always act as if you have free will. Because that's the way we define it. We define picking apple juice over orange juice as choice. If we hadn't defined it as that, we wouldn't even have this conversation. And we define choice as free will, but we made up all those stepping stones of language in society. If we'd never, Khaleesi to Khaleesi, there's never the issue of free will or choice. Khaleesi is my dog. So she seems to pick, so I can offer her a carrot and I can offer her chicken. And she quickly eats the chicken. She smells and then quickly eats the chicken. She doesn't have any concept about it being free will or choice or hers or not hers. That energy, that decision is just coming from boundless space. It doesn't belong to anyone, and it's not in the category of do I have free will or not. The reason why it's important to us as separate entities, if we have free will or not, is because of the way we see the world and how it affects our pain and pleasure. So then you need to look on the relative level, on the human conditioning, as to what you feel around free will and choice. What fears you have if you don't have free will, or what fears you have if you do have free will. How does that make you feel? Because these ideas have kind of been sucked in by this energy that believes that your ideas and everything you think is true, and that's reality. So what do both of these things make you feel? And just become more aware of what's actually happening. He says, thank you. Thanks, Brad. Lovely question.